Hello fellow gamers, welcome back to the channel. This is episode 12 of my new series, Let's Play Disco Elysium. In today's episode, we will meet again with the entrepreneur extraordinaire, Siileng. We will also investigate more about the drug trade in Jamrock. Also, we will meet again with Joyce Messier to get more information regarding the ongoing negotiations between the corporation and the union. If you want to know more about the interaction, please watch until the end. But before you do, please consider hitting the subscribe button as it would truly help the channel out. Also, smash that bell icon to get notified of my new uploads. And so, without further ado, let's get into the game.
There he still is, looking right through you with his white eyes. The body below is entirely dedicated to that corpse smell. Emitting it is all it does now.
Ha ha ha! Again!
The corpse laughs at you, pus dripping from its mouth.
You will never be able to hold it in. It's always too much.
Every time it happens, it gets worse and worse. There's nothing more to throw up now. All that's left is crying and convulsing dryly at the same time. The lieutenant is clearly at a loss.
Officer, you just need to be stronger. Learn to keep it in long enough for us to work. There's nothing else to do.
Relax. It's okay if you don't make it today. The bloated corpse isn't going anywhere.
You keep coming back!
If he really wants to save the economy, he'd let you pay with net worth. Go over and ask him if you can. Something cold grazes your hand. Synthetic and sleek. A windbreaker. Surf, it says, but also wind, summer, 100% waterproof, and sport. All in different typefaces.
Good choice, officer. Mega sporty. And it's only $4.50 for you, sir. The shine on these sunglasses lasts a lifetime, officer. 100.
Stylish shades, huh? They'd be even more stylish if you paid for them with net worth. Go over and ask.
Oh, very interesting choice, officer. Very high culture.
This is how a sea monster sees the world. You've become a sea monster. Giant, hidden, and strangely tender at heart. All is blue.
Wow, officer! You look so cool! And they can be yours for a mere 3 real. My regular customers have passed them all up because they've got no taste. But you found them.
The lieutenant tilts his head and steps back, eyes narrowed in a thorough examination. It's a case to him.
You look like a musician. Like a blind musician. But you could do worse. Take them if you want.
Hello. Sure, let me have a look. I'm not purchasing any more clothing at the moment. Anything else you're thinking of selling? Another time, perhaps.
Just an ordinary wall. Nothing to see here.
You're back. Good. What can I help you with? Everything. Right up to, but not including, trade secrets. First, you'd have to repeal the Emergencies Act of Trade in Aliments that gives me the right to silence. It's quite the octopus. Why? By throwing off half a century of foreign domination under the Coalition. Unfortunately for you, the Coalition also leases you the right to police West Revachol.
You'd be shooting yourself in the foot, in other words.
But I am derailing us. You wanted to know about the strike. I believe the official title is Senior Labour Negotiator. In practice, I'm a grocery clerk. I relay the union's demands to Wild Pines and return with Wild Pines' counteroffer.
And how are the talks going?
They're not. That's the problem. The union stopped all negotiations a week ago, after that awful lynching took place. Now they won't even let me into the harbour. There's a 2-meter-20 racist behemoth blocking the gates. Oh, so you've met him. Has he beguiled you with his inane theories?
My colleague has his peculiarities. Let's not go into this particular one just yet.
Of course. To each their own. Let's say I was not making the kind of progress I'd hoped for when I first arrived.
And when did you first arrive?
I arrived 3 weeks ago. Yes, in the middle of February. The bay was still partially frozen then. I prefer to do these things on site, like the RCM.
But the strike began in December.
I wasn't the original negotiator here. I took over after Mr. Gaumont hit a wall with Mr. Clare, the union boss. Mr. Clare refused to speak with Gaumont despite concessions he'd granted the union in prior negotiations.
This isn't the first time the union has gone on strike?
Heavens no. There have been 2 prior strikes. Both times the union won significant concessions, including overtime pay and a medical plan. This time their demands are more, I guess you could say, aggressive.
Ludicrous even. It's meant.
Mr. Clare told him to... how did he put it? Fuck off, midget. Gaumont is short of stature, you see. Yes. Keep in mind, this is a negotiator Mr. Clare has worked with before, and who was more than fair with him and the union. There are leaflets everywhere, and banners. What did they say again? Oh yes, every worker, a member of the board.
Most of the workers probably don't know what that means.
Then you might also like their other slogan, Demand Democracy. Personally, I don't think it has the same pizzazzo as every worker, a member of the board. It's quite simple, you see. Every time the Wild Pines group makes a decision, about what? About anything really, it needs the signature of each of the 2,200 workers in its Martinez terminal. Just so you understand, this is but one of 22 terminals owned by Wild Pines. Essentially, not only are they kings of the company, they are also kings of the 72,000 employees of Wild Pines Group. They're having a blast. But how can they afford it? After 4 months, my assumption was they would prefer a more practical solution. I'm not sure. Naturally, I assumed that was just their opening position, a hard-nosed tactic with a side of mockery. But there's been no follow-up, just the same nonsensical slogan repeated over and over again. And now, people are getting lynched, I hear. Behind the whirling in rags. A disastrous situation if there ever was one.
Excuse me, from whom did you hear about this lynching?
I first heard it from the boyer at the gates. The one whose very name advertises his aversion to work. I think he said it was, "Call me mañana."
This checks out. No, wait. The chief negotiator heard it from a man at the gates. Surely the Wild Pines group has more effective channels of information. After all, 2,200 people are on strike. This is a big deal for them.
The scabs? You mean the huddled masses of Jamrock, come to plead for work where the Union refuses to? If they were organized by Wild Pines or its affiliates, then it would be a company secret. I could not share it with you. Not right now, at least.
It's implied. She's open to discussing this matter with you at a later occasion.
Everard Clare is a man of the utmost integrity. If you can say one thing about him, it's that he always puts the interests of the workers first. Of course not. Everard is fantastically corrupt. I imagine he has a thick, viscous goo where you and I have blood. He is the most corrupt individual I have ever seen, and I deal with men like him for a living. If there is anyone more venal, more irredeemably nepotistic, then it's his twin brother, Edgar. Have you seen him? Edgar looks exactly like his brother, except for that lazy eye. He also talks exactly like Everard does, and when one's term as foreman is up, the other takes over. It's how they circumvent the term limits, you see, with a funny little switcheroo. While in office, they've embezzled God knows how much of their workers' dues. The Débardeurs Union was once a perfectly normal institution. 20 years ago, anyway. It must not have been easy to establish under the Emergency Act, but they did it. I can respect that. Organized labor at its best, as they say. Then something happened in the local chapter elections. The brothers Clare came and transformed it into a... how do you say?
A mob. The Débardeurs are a crime syndicate. Sad as it may be, I suspect we'll be forced to cooperate with them.
Refreshingly honest, officer. The company has tried appeasing in the past, but I'm afraid our concessions have only emboldened Everard and his brother. And your opinion, Detective, if I may ask? I'm a curious and talkative person, you see. Would you say the Débardeurs Union is... Of course, officer. I'm glad you asked. There was a woman, the previous forewoman of the Union. She disappeared.
Disappeared?
Yes. On the last day of the local chapter elections, her daughter phoned in and said she wasn't running anymore. Or coming to work. Ever. End of story. Indeed. The company suspects foul play, but there's nothing they could do. It was a union matter. The point of the presentation is, these kinds of things happen around the Clares. Watch out when you're dealing with him.
Thank you for your concern, ma'am. We'll be just fine.
Of course. How else can I help? Quite a few things, I'm afraid. The information I'm to share with you includes sensitive trade secrets. For the sake of my employer, I have to ask for your names and badge numbers.
Of course, ma'am. We should have introduced ourselves. I am Lieutenant Kitsuragi, from Precinct 57. And this is my colleague from Precinct 41. I'm afraid he doesn't have his badge at the moment. I hope mine will suffice.
How curious. Why is that, Detective? I see. So, are you saying you lost your badge during the course of this episode? Oh dear. I suppose this does explain some of the more curious turns in our conversation.
She must have been suspecting something for a while now.
As I said, ma'am, his technique may be very unconventional, but he is an officer of the RCM.
Of course, I sympathize. but I'm afraid I simply can't share anything more until I've seen that badge.
Hang on. She's a professional negotiator. She should be open to some sort of mutually beneficial arrangement. I mean, favors for favors. A dirty alliance of some sort. Consider this. Perhaps she has been planning it all along. That you convince yourself into colluding with her. Easy. Just offer her a favor. Like I said, nice and dirty.
I will be frank with you. If I'm going to break protocol, I need to be able to justify it to my superiors. They're going to want to see something very tangible.
You're in, but expect her to drive a hard bargain.
Reports from inside Terminal B suggest it's a hub for the local drug trade. This is an open secret in Martinez. The Union controls the terminal, so it goes to reason.
She wants you to help her gain leverage to restart negotiations with the Union.
The company has tried looking into this matter before, to no avail. Perhaps someone with your authority and resources might turn over the right stones. Or you can recover your badge. Though if I may be blunt with you, it sounds like that may be a lost cause.
Detective, a word in private before we continue.
What's this? We're getting reports of normal, reasonable, temperate political opinions somewhere in Martinez. Of course, a radical centrist. In these bright and loud times where 1,000 frequencies drown one another out, sober thinking is a radical act. It's time to become a citizen of the kingdom of conscience. It is not a place. It is a moment in time that can only arise in the right circumstances. In all of human history, it's only been achieved a handful of times. Incrementally. Yawn. You'd get there fast. History's greatest catastrophes have been brought about by people trying to make the world a better place. Too quickly. That's the genius of Dolores Day. She recognized that progress is meaningless if its gains are lost because of instability. Real, lasting change can only come about gradually, increment by increment. Tisk tisk. Just because you live in the present doesn't mean you have the right to place your needs above the needs of the future. You may never live to see the kingdom of conscience. Your children may not. Even your grandchildren might not. But that's no excuse not to keep working. What rationality? What a fucking joke. Do you believe the status quo is preferable to chaos and bloodshed? There you have it. Sometimes holding the line is progress. The kingdom is difficult to comprehend and even more difficult to describe, partly because humanity will need to discard many of the categories that define and limit it today. The kingdom of conscience is post-capitalist, post-national. It's also post-industrial, post-ideological, and even post-sexual. Slow down, Mr. Reasonable. Did you miss the part about compromising and taking things slow? That's right. Remember, real democracy is just around the corner for Revachol. When that real democracy kicks in, a long time from now, we are all going to be so much happier.
You're back. Good. What can I help you with? It's quite straightforward. Someone is using Terminal B to smuggle raw ingredients from the Samaran Isola into Revachol with the Union's blessing. Wild Pines has suspected it for years.
Ingredients for what, ma'am?
Meth and dextroamphetamine, GBL, and various synthetic psychedelics. Honestly, it might be quicker to say what you can't make from the stuff. Yes. After they clear the terminal, we lose track. The actual production is taking place at various sites in and around Jamrock Quarter, north of here.
Wild Pine seems to be well apprised of the local drug trade, ma'am. Do you mean to say the Union also produces the product? Sells drugs, I mean?
We're in logistics. It's our business to know. And no. As far as the company knows, the Union does not produce it. They transport the ingredients for a cut. Yes, but you won't get anything out of Evrat and the Dock Workers Union. Still, every chain has its weak link.
The handoff. The motor lorries at the roundabout.
Precisely. Someone needs to move the ingredients from the harbour into the city. Once they reach Jamrock, they're distributed to a network of local manufacturers well beyond our grasp. But in transit, they're vulnerable.
How convenient that they're stranded like beached whales at that roundabout.
Perhaps you've noticed that a number of lorries are tangled in a traffic jam at the roundabout just now. Interview the drivers who are still hanging about. One of them might be waiting for a crucial shipment. I'll be explicit. If you find this driver, I will share company secrets with you.
Uncovering Union secrets could also give you an upper hand when dealing with them.
We did. On more than one occasion. Apparently, there's some sort of inter-precinct disagreement about whose jurisdiction this area falls under.
We know the company has launched its own probe into the Union's alleged involvement. We also know it's come up empty. It's not just the RCM. No one's been able to find any hard evidence.
Well, here's your chance, officers. No. We asked East Motor Track to raise the drawbridge. The road company is a partner of one of our subsidiaries. However, this is a limited time opportunity. Once the complaint has been processed by the Trade Committee, they'll have no choice but to lower the drawbridge, and the operation will continue. Thousands of litres of raw ingredients will pour onto the streets of Revachol. Not the east across the river, but the west. The vulnerable. The weary.
Well, at least this solves one mystery.
What is that, Lieutenant?
Why I had to call East Motor Track and beg them to open a drawbridge for me. I'd wondered since I first drove in, on my motor carriage.
I am sorry for the inconvenience, Lieutenant Kisaragi, but we need them trapped here. This is a unique opportunity. I'm sure you understand. How do you think they're financing this strike? There are thousands of unpaid dock workers going strong for the 4th month straight.
There was a shakedown of local businesses preceding the strike. Many were squeezed to bankruptcy to fund it.
With all due respect to these desert cacti, the contents of a few cash registers cannot provide for 2,000 men. The local businesses can scarcely provide for themselves. Precisely. Smuggled out of that very gate at night, most likely, then loaded onto lorries and driven to Jamrock. You simply need to find one driver who will open up to you.
It sounds like she tried looking into it herself, though she's clearly not the type your typical lorryman would confide in.
The two might even be connected.
Or not. Though, if you have evidence to the contrary, I'm eager to hear it.
As eager as I am to share it, Lieutenant, once the job is done. Yes? Excellent. According to my reports, there are at least 3 lorry drivers lingering near the roundabout. Hopefully one of them will know something. It may come to nothing, or it may just blow the case wide open. I can keep the drawbridge up for a few more days at least. You should have the time you need. In the meantime, let me know if there's any other way I may be of assistance. Why, yes I am. Of course there are. We're on an archipelago. How else are you supposed to get around? Yes, we are. We are on Le Caillou. We are. And the city of Revachol is on the island of Le Caillou. I haven't seen anyone else drive a souped-up Capri Kenema motor carriage either.
Actually, that motor carriage has been specially issued to serve as a patrol and pursuit vehicle. It's for crossing long distances in a greater Revachol industrial harbor. It's not a toy.
Neither is this. A toy, I mean. It's a machine for crossing long distances in the Bay of Revachol, between the city and the islands.
You need to make this lady admit she's only riding around on this boat because she's rich. Why what? Stop thinking. Take her down. Have it your way.
The boat? No. It is called Cordelati 19 because that's the type of sloop it is. It's a pleasure craft, a 19 pacer. It also happens to be rated for Category 1 racing, though these days I mainly use it for business. My sloop? I like it a lot. It's the eel's hips, baby.
I'm enjoying this part of the interview. It has so little to do with the murder we're investigating.
Officer, I assure you I'm a highly qualified pleasure craft operator.
The crowns of her teeth are porcelain, white as the boat's hull as she smiles. Qualified pleasure craft operator. So charming. Where's the damn license?
I just renewed its safety inspection last month, officers. It is completely seaworthy. In fact, it's taken part in not 1, but 2 Siileng regattas. Even finished once. The other time, I would have finished the race were it not for an urgent work matter, much like the one I'm on now.
Actually, you don't. The Wayfarer Act specifically denies the RCM the authority to demand anyone's operator license. It's a little-known fact among us law officials.
The Wayfarer Act is one of the few pieces of legislation governing human interaction in the Revachol zone. The one time this busted-up cabbage has something useful for your job, you just want to stare at some boat. Fine. Knock yourself out.
I was just being polite. Even school children know the Wayfarer Act.
About the boat? Good. More lessons in basic reality? My favorite part of the day. Go ahead, ask me anything.
What is all of this? The scent, the sound, the air.
What world? The only one, I suppose. The world of matter. And its pale antipode.
The camera of her mind glides over the surface of the water.
Great bodies of water. Forest-covered surfaces. Clusters of light where the cities lie. You've seen the montage. We all have. This world is enough. There is a term of endearment they coined for it in the DeLorean century, when humanity was high on this world, discovering more and more of it, these archipelagos included. Elysium. It does. There are those who would call it hell. A term of hatred that originates, like many such things, with the Mesk petro-fascists. Oh, you want a picture of the world? There is no complete set yet, dear. They're having some trouble reaching orbit. Great things are difficult to achieve. For now, we're viewing the world from the inside, sideways. We used to think it was a sphere, but that is beginning to look less and less likely by the day. You wouldn't know it from the tabloids, but the ORG nations have been launching weather balloons into the lower ionosphere since the 30s.
ORG, Occident Grad.
There's a steadily increasing trickle of images. Between the big three scientific contributors, they're piecing together a dark grey corona. Yes. Pale covers 72% of the surface. There are grey flares and prominences, even arcs above entire isolas. The images are blurry, but if there was a sphere in there, it certainly looks like it fractured a long time ago.
A cold fear seeps into you.
They say there is a rarefied envelope of matter surrounding the darkened disk of our planet. That is, if we are still living on a planet. Or, to speak more plainly, imagine vast swathes of land disrupted by nothingness. I am sorry, dear. It must sound quite terrifying through the acute encephalopathy. Even scientific positivism isn't entirely convinced about what we're dealing with here. But this is one of the greatest questions of our time. Maybe when they get the complete set together, it will jolt us out of our rut, bring us together, however naive it may sound. You have misimagined it. I don't have the power to convey to you the effect and geometry of the images that depict our world from below low orbit. It's... It's like the crowning of the world. It's insane. Very disco. You'd love it. But you already have. And you're doing just fine, despite the rubble.
The cold seeps into you. The air is heavy with 80% humidity. Suddenly, you're conscious of yourself standing there, on whatever this all is. Your arms hang down by your sides. The lieutenant observes you both, silently. He adjusts his glasses.
The Pale is not, technically speaking, part of reality.
Yes. Also, I think we've had enough excitement for today. Remember, we have a cadaver to attend to.
Of course, Lieutenant. Let's try something else.
Ma'am, remember you are dealing with a very sensitive and impressionable police officer who is still recovering from a recent medical episode.
The Lieutenant's right. Let's change topics. What do you want to know? Anything.
This is not going to happen with the lieutenant present, unless you can convince him to step aside.
A bird? A sphenicid? A flightless bird of the polar regions? Some sort of krill hunter? No, wait. You're an ancient ruin. A symbol of hubris and decay. Half submerged in some salty sea. Of course you're not, my dear. I'm just terrible at guessing games. Ah! This is the pier of Rue de Saint-Ghislain, 33A, where the tenants have been kind enough to rent me a slot. Or two. A pre-revolutionary tenement. Old buildings are called tenements, you see. And new buildings, bâtiments. After les bâtiments nouveaux. But 33A and 33B are not nouveaux. They're old. This one used to be 8 to 10 stories tall. A real high-rise by the standards of the last century. Built to mirror the skyscrapers across the bay in the Delta. That was before mostly the urban middle class, I believe. This was once primo real estate, before the cannons lopped 4 or 5 stories off. Splat, splat. Wonderful. The girl in the old lady rags. Looks like a sullen and rebellious member of a teen infraculture. Yes, you and I belong to the supraculture. We're common, the herd. The music on the radio, the food in the chain restaurant, those are all too popular for the girl in the old lady rags. She prefers a fantasy world, an infraculture with its own dress code and vernacular. It is an illusion, I'm afraid. There is no refuge from the supraculture. I can't. That's how simple it is. One may dye their hair green and wear their grandma's coat all they want. Capital has the ability to subsume all critiques into itself. Even those who would critique capital end up reinforcing it instead. All right. What next?
Suddenly, you're not so sure you're part of the supraculture. Of course, no time for silly infracultures. There are more pressing, reality-centric questions to be asked.
Glad to have been of assistance. The little that I know. Anything else?
This is not going quite as I hoped it would, Detective. Honestly, I was expecting you to use your unorthodox technique to keep her off balance, and not volunteer us to be her henchman. This woman is running circles around us. She might have known about your misplaced badge all along, or she's simply an adept improviser. Either way, we've played straight into her hands.
Maybe this is all her plan. She might have heard about you.
I wouldn't go that far. Her reaction did come off as sincere to me. I think she's just quick to adapt. She's a professional, after all. Yes. Knowing this does not really change our position, however. No. If there is reasonable suspicion, we must investigate. Otherwise, she could claim we are siding with the Union, or that we are on their take. We'd never hear the end of it. What I propose is, we ask her, then we investigate, briefly. But do not share the outcome of this investigation with her. We tell her it's done, and demand for her information on the lynching. Oh, that would be fantastic, but do we have the time? The world is large and your badge is 8 by 6 centimeters.
The situation might have changed drastically by the time you locate it. Time is of the essence.
You could request a new one from your station, but that would literally take months.
You're back. Good. What can I help you with? Until you come up with something at that intersection, I'm afraid I have little else to tell you. But I'll try.
She simply nods.
Hello guys, I'm gonna end this episode for now. Please be on the lookout for the next one. Again, if you like this type of content, please consider subscribing. Also, I have another series on my channel, and it's called Average Gamer Plays on Hard Mode. It's a series wherein I play games with the difficulty level set on the hardest mode. If you wanna know how an average gamer fares playing titles on the hardest mode, you should definitely check it out. And with that, I am signing off, and I will see you fellow gamers on the next episode.